So I would speak more about generative AI.
Generative AI.
As one of the biggest constraints in generative AI is the availability of data. So if he gets the relevant data in a specific pool for you to build generative AI models, any business unit becomes a lot easier, whether it be marketing, whether it be finance, whether it be retail, whether it be any models that we would create for those functions. You need data and data specific to that environment.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Kaka Computer, where tech meets wit and wisdom. And today we're on the field. We're going to talk to Rocket Software. Sir, maybe you can introduce yourself and also the company.
Yep. So I'm Praveen Kumar. I run Asia Pacific for Rocket Software, and I've been with the company for almost 50 lips now.
Right. And with Rocket Software, your aim or your thrust is modernization, especially in the Philippines, right? How long have you been here in the Philippines and what has been your foothold here so far?
So you said we have to be a little witty.
Yeah, of course, you can see. Yeah.
So you got to be a little bit. But yeah, we've been fairly old because we're looking at modernization. We've been here since 2010. And that means we're here about 15 years, so to say. We were a very small business unit at that time. But however, over the years, we've acquired a lot of trust with some of the larger business units across financials, manufacturing, retail, insurance, and built an ecosystem where some of the largest business entities in the Philippines are our customers today for a variety of solutions that we offer.
Right. And I think it's also good to point out that if you are in the space of modernization, one of the requirements by feel is that you must be trusted and you must be in the industry for quite some time. You cannot modernize something if you don't have a background, the old ways of doing things. Either if you're being new now, let's say if you're a startup and you immediately go to modernization, there are a lot of items that have been learned, have been practiced that us as older folks have known already. And there's learning from being, a legacy in that sense that we will apply to modernization.
You're actually hitting the nail on the head. Most of the people believe modernization means just take out something and build new. Yeah. But that's not how it works, because most businesses build knowledge over a period directly. And not only that, they don't cater to only one kind of target audience. They cater to different audiences. So if you take banks for an example, they'll cater to people who are 90 years old, 100 years old, and they'll cater to people who are 18 years or 16 years old. And the requirement of a 90-year-old person is not going to be the same as the requirement of a 16-year-old person. Similarly, they cater to different business methodologies. So if you want to buy insurance, you're not going to buy only term insurance. You buy health insurance, package insurance, buy travel insurance. So there are different business segments. So modernization not only has to be built over time, but it's not a rip and replace. And that's why Rocket's tagline is modernization without disruption.
Modernization without disruptions. That's a really good tagline.
Yes, so we make sure businesses just don't do rip and replace. They kind of evolve into the final objective that they want to achieve over a period of time.
Is there any kind of examples or specifics that you can share with our audience on a project that was, I would say, challenging and that you're able to modernize within a fairly reasonable time?
So you take some very interesting examples. During COVID,
Yeah.
most individuals were not allowed to come into office, right? They were supposed to work from home. During that period, we had a large bank in Philippines wanting to modernize some of their core user interfaces for customers. And they had a lot of legacy software beside your backend. At the same time, they wanted to introduce new functions and new features for the users to download or accept. Now, why do you have to do this entire integration during COVID? We enabled a system where they could build this entire infrastructure sitting at home from their home environment. At the same time, it could interface with new age technologies which were sitting on the cloud without any disruption to their core business, which used to happen in a historical way. Similarly, another insurance company had an interesting challenge. They were used to selling insurance in the historical way by you buying health insurance or medical insurance or travel insurance. But suddenly they had a requirement where a lot of their travel integrators started saying, I want to sell insurance. And they never understood why and how. And when they understood the business model, they said every time a person goes on a trek to, let's say, the Himalayas, or let's say someone is going on a boat ride, someone's taking a flight, they would like to buy insurance with that particular purchase. Now, this meant that the insurance company has to tie up not with the airline or the trek agency, they had to tie up with an aggregator who's selling this service. Yes. Right. So it's like an e commerce website. It's like Amazon actually selling the product, but it's not owned by Amazon. So when the insurance company had to integrate with an aggregator, it was not one aggregator, it was hundreds of aggregators because you're not buying tickets or travel or hotels or trekking from one aggregator. You have multiple choices. Right. So they had a huge challenge that their systems were not ready for such integration. So every time they would sell, they would have to issue a policy, and the policy would take 10 minutes. Whereas when the customer buys the ticket or they want they get immediate thing, right? Instant gratification. So it did take a lot of challenge for them to think that this is going to be a big issue. And that's when we came in and said, hey, we can solve this problem very easily for you, even though you're running legacy, by creating an integration layer and giving something like APIs to the rest of the world. Whereas you don't have to do any coding changes of the package. They could just get it and get out.
So you mentioned that one of the things a company has to do for modernization is really assess their company. Number one, are they ready for it? Are there prerequisites to it? What are some of the things that when you go into a company, what are the first steps that you have to do to prepare them for modernization? And so that they can answer, should we modernize now or should we do some preparations before we can start modernization?
So it's the mindset. It's less of a technology gap analysis. It's the mindset. Almost every company wants to modernize. So there is no, and in Philippines, almost every medium to large enterprise wants to modernize. So it's not a question of whether you want to modernize or no. It's a question of when do you want to modernize, right? And the when is not, again, and most of them say they want to do it, and now yesterday. But the biggest thing is, how do you want to do it? And the general thought process with most individuals is, I'm going to rewrite this entire thing in a new code somewhere, which removes all the business logic. And there have been studies which have proved that almost 70% of companies fail when you revise and they have to come back because the rewritten code does not care to all of this. So you actually spend all of that money, you lose 30% of the funds you paid, and you have to keep. So what we come and say is, don't think in that direction. Stay where you are. We help you in integration, moving data around, making sure data replication happens, making sure integration happens with the years, and you can modernize. And over a period of time, if you still want to move off the legacy application, you can do it in steps, in stages. So that way, what happens is your modernization effort and time is considerably. So we have a company in Australia, for example, who has about 1,500 warehouses in the country. And they have it distributed across the country.
Right.
And they sell a lot of phones. The biggest challenge was some of these warehouses and the shops that are there are in remote locations where connectivity may be a challenge, where skills may be a challenge, etc. And they have a legacy ERP running at the core in the center in Sydney. So their biggest challenge was, how do I make sure while I build fantastic UIs for everybody to use, how do I integrate with this in a way that I could do transfer of data not instantly, but whenever I want to based on connectivity? So we came in and offered them a solution. So it took them about 6 to 7 months, but they could roll it out immediately to all of it instead of spending years rewriting the core code, then thinking about it, deploy, etc.
Your example, I think is really relevant to the Philippine setting. Because in my experience, I've also experienced when I was still consulting a lot of companies where they could not centralize their systems because of the internet connectivity. They could not run a cloud-based POS in their province locations or province branches because sometimes that branch would be offline for 2 months because the internet provider could not, right? So your example really is very good in a sense that you really have to prepare, you have to cater to the specific scenario and adjust based on the client's needs. Right. Of course, we have to go and ask modernization with AI. What are some of the examples, or how does your company bring AI to modernization?
So I would speak more about generative AI.
Generative AI.
As one of the biggest constraints in generative AI is the availability of data. So if you get the relevant data in a specific pool for you to build generative AI models, any business unit becomes a lot easier, whether it be marketing, whether it be finance, whether it be retail, whether it be any models that we would create for those functions. You need data and data specific to that environment. The challenge today in most enterprises that we've noticed is the ability for them to move data in pockets for different applications which can do generative AI has been a challenge. And that's where Rakib's come in and kind of provided an ability for them to move data live. So the biggest thing in generative AI is I need data live. If I want to do analytics, I need live data. Historically, people would move data into a data warehouse and or a data lake and then crunch that data in data hubs. But that doesn't work because right now I need live data. It's got to come now, got to see it now, and I have to take action. A lot of action is happening. Well, just take ticketing, for example, right? Which has been the age-old system. As your ticketing seats fill up, the price is going up. Yes, right? So if I have to build a model where I can offer which airline has less seats at any point, if I'm building a website that says which airline is going to offer me the lowest number of prices based on the seats being filled up, I need immediate data to me. I can't get that data later. Now, within the company, be it a bank or an issuance, whatever, I need to understand that data live and then for me to build models which can then crunch that data and give me feedback. And that's where Rocket's offering solutions which help you bring that data up, allow you to build those data models and sync both ways. So if you have to update the core system or come back, then it becomes a lot easy.
So you've touched in a lot of industries. Is there any particular industry set that you specialize in for the Philippines?
Mostly financials, very strong in the financial sector, banking, insurance. And that's where we have historically found a lot of need to modernize, a lot of business logic building, a lot of data movement between systems, and at the same time, the ability to optimize cost and help then generate more revenue. So we've seen these industries excel a lot more than others.
Is there any industry you wish would adopt faster modernization, or is there like a laggard?
So far, in my personal engagement as well as my team across the region, only in Philippines, we don't find anybody lagging on purpose. Some of the lagging is because of the way the business demands are in Philippines compared to how it is outside. So it is not the customer does not want to. And that's where you will find in Philippines. Let's take banking, for example. You have banks which only open branches and have become big. And there are banks which are digital and are scaling. And the banks which are hybrid, which have a function of both branches and digital, which is scaling up. So all three models are working. But one model is working better than the other because of how uh, the people respond within the particular country. You go to Singapore, it's different. If you go to Australia, it's different. If you go to Malaysia, it's different because the needs are a little different for each particular industry. So if you like a lot of retail shopping, if you still have a lot of promotion of hybrid work where you're not calling people back to work, then the e-commerce industry furnishes, the retail industry does not, in the restaurant industry does not because of people working off on their own. Then the commercial complexes don't be as big. Earlier, the real estate complexes used to be large. Now they don't need such large out of big. Yeah, they need it smaller. Even get it that way. So the market demand change by country. So I don't think there is a laggard, so to speak, but some of the modernization initiatives get delayed not because they don't want to do it. That's because there are other priorities to do, while this one is not the highest in market demand.
Rocket Software help customers in all industries solve their most complex IT challenges across infrastructure, data, and applications with solutions that simplify, not disrupt. Regardless of your industry or location, we help modernize in place with a hybrid cloud strategy to accelerate and optimize your modernization journey while meeting evolving market needs.
And you mentioned that again, the, the a lot of people want modernization, and it needs a lot of data. And as you mentioned, also the business leader. If you're a company, how much of your own internal data do you rely, and what happens, or should you supplement that with data that you should get outside your company, right? Like if you're modernization, you might have your own data. Is there a need to gather additional data, or is it like 10% more data that you need to get and maybe even buy, so you can approach a better modernization strategy, or do you solely rely on mostly your own data that you gather?
I guess it's a mixture of both. We've seen some companies, like we were working with a pharma company, and the pharma company used to source data from side apart from the data they had, primarily to ensure they understand the clinical trial data, they understand the pharmaceutical results and the side effects and the number of incidents that happened because of particular compositions, etc. They were able to get data from universities globally. What we found out is there is data when it's sourced, even internal data for that matter, is not clean all the time with a lot of duplication. Take a very simple thing like KYC, which is know your customer for banks. If you go to any bank today, or any insurance company, or anybody who takes KYC data, you would find multiple copies of the KYC pay sitting in that environment in different systems. So if I'm having a loan with a bank, and with the same bank I'm doing savings, and the same bank I'm doing trading, and if they've taken KYC 3 times in 3 different years, I might be working for a different company, my salary might be different, my house might be different, and my name might have changed, whatever. Right? But I'd have 3 different copies of it. and none of them are the same. Having three same copies is COVID. At least you can clean it and make it right. Yes. But if I have three different copies, I don't know which one's right. So even within the company itself, data cleansing is a big thing. And it's curriculum exercise because you don't know what to clean, you don't know what to maintain. And someone to the data officer cannot decide to say this branch has this, so just clean it up. It's the branch which has to come and take the insight, and they don't have the time. So there's a lot of incorrect data that's residing within the company. So when you go and source it from the outside, like this pharma company I was starting, they said almost 80% of the data they received was wrong. It took me some time to source to find out. And if they had multiple sources, they found out they used to get the same junk from three companies. But you're paying three companies for the same junk.
Yeah.
Whereas all three are junk. So data sourcing is needed. But first of all, to have your own data, if you can make sure that data is relevant and you could make sense out of it and is correct and can use, and you need more to complement, then sourcing it makes sense. Sourcing it right up front can be fairly detrimental.
Cool. And I think I want to add to this that, I think it's also important that you learn, number one, get outside data. And so I think that's why consultants are also important because they bring new perspective, yes, new data in that sense that is, as you said, like cleaned in a sense, like, best practice that have already been deployed in other companies too, right? Do you have a particular advice for, let's say, young leaders who want to modernize? Um, is there a particular set of steps, a recipe that they should follow to modernize?
So I can tell you what not to do.
Not to do. That's also a good set of advice.
The rip and replace is the worst thing to do.
Yes.
And it's not me saying it, it's a lot of analysts who have said it. And they've said that has caused the most harm for most enterprises when they rip and replace. It has not been a successful endeavor. A lot of money gets wasted. You end up plowing it back to fix what you already started. So rip and replace is probably the last option you should choose if you don't have any other better alternatives. And that also causes a lot of disruption, right? At the end of the day, you're double spending, doing a lot of spend. And if it doesn't work, then it's very challenging. I think a small transition around initially understanding the integration landscape, understanding solutions that can help you in integrating the environment, understanding if you can move data elements and data pockets out for certain applications in a synchronous manner, which would help you take workload off the legacy for modernization and accordingly deploying isolated applications for it. Or if you're going for a single application to solve all the problem, then understanding if that application can start with individual functions instead of taking the entire exercise altogether would generally assist most people. And again, like you said, if you could hire consultants who could come in and advise which integration tools make sense, now how can you automate that integration to an extent, like have an API hub with an integrated API, which would help you integrating some of those functions, maybe build tools in terms of skills that would help you get to that landscape. Also have data and replication tools like what Rocket has to move at profits of data out. So if you could go through those steps, which the consultants can recommend in terms of how someone has been successful doing this in any industry, then that would be steps to take. But what not to take, according to me, is the first step of rewriting the entire code, putting it. Rocket as solutions where you can take existing legacy application and move it to the cloud. So you can take out the existing hardware, move it to the cloud, take the cloud capacities, have integration from the cloud, and then you can start playing it out, which means you're basically doing a transplant in a different place, which is lower cost, higher scalable, etc. As a worst case, that it's better than a rip and replace because technically you're just taking the same application with the same logic and taking to the cloud. So if you don't want to do the integration in data, and business process logic understanding and then migration to a new system, you could just take the same application and take it.
Now to end our our set, I wanna, if you can indulge me, we're talking mostly about modernization today, right? So if you look at maybe 10, 20 years from now, I wanna see, for your own perspective, personal perspective, what does modernization look like then? Especially, with things like maybe quantum computing coming around the corner, or maybe even things like uh, brain interface, right? So again, and uh, what is there modernization 10, 20 years from now?
It's highly unpredictable. All I can say is today, mobile is the biggest thing from a user computing perspective. It's today. Tomorrow, it's going to be wearables. It's not going to be mobile. Mobile is going to be an isolated device like a computer. 20 years later, everything's going to be on a ring or a chain or a watch or, I don't know, your fingers. You will have some sticker that you could use and add to it. Um, it's insane. Like, if you see how industries are collaborating, we were in the US this last month, and Uber Drive was driving Tesla. Said Tesla's offering a service in the US at $99 a month, where you self-drive the cars. Basically, the car's driving. It's to drive. You don't pay 99 bucks. So technically, you're hiring a driver at 99 bucks a month, the way Tesla's offering sales. And my view was, hey, you're killing Uber's business, which is the Uber model, right? And that Uber model is coming into Tesla digital model. And BYD probably does this already in China in a way, right? As BYD has modernized the electric auto landscape. So the landscape of which automotive company does what or which bank does what has reached, or which insurance company has just transformed. So from a modernization perspective, it's very hard to estimate what would be 20 years from now. Because 20 years back, if someone told me if it drive cars without a driver, I laughed, right? We used to see these sci-fi movies and think, this must be a joke. If someone thought a man could fly, you'd think Iron Man's a joke. Like 20 years later, Iron Man could be real. You could have a suit that could fly, and I don't know. I think what Elon Musk is doing in terms of what he's visualizing in SpaceX, etc., is insane. So I don't think technology limitations don't exist anyway.
And is there any particular feature that you're excited for? In a sense, like, uh, are you excited with, like I said, the haptic devices, or is there anything that you personally?
Personally, I'm okay. I'm just moving with the technology. I don't look forward or behind. I live in the present. It's hard for me to get extremely enthused by what's going to happen because I don't know what are the impact of that, right? So nobody thought that. Do you know the industry that is going to benefit the most because of generative AI? Did you know that?
At the moment, well, thinking, well, not benefit, but we're really thinking that the creatives industry is taking hit, right?
Well, do you know which industry is going to benefit?
I actually don't know.
It's the power industry.
The power industry.
That's the reaction is. So the power, really, it's very interesting. So the logic around this is for doing generative AI, what do you need?
You need a lot of power, and
You need a lot of compute power.
yes,
What does compute power work out? Electricity. And that means you need large data centers, which builds large compute power, which is going to consume a lot more electricity. So if generative AI is going to be the future 20 years now, no, what do I bet on? I bet on power. And how do you generate power? That's why you would see most large governments are talking about how you should generate power. Years, how can I generate? You must be wondering, why do I need power? I have 24/7 power. The power hungry data centers are just going to multiply in multifold depending on how generative AI evolves. So it's always like this, that an industry which you never dreamt would either be impacted or benefiting will suddenly benefit because a different industry which got nothing to do with this. And nobody would think that a power industry will benefit because of generative AI. You'd think data centers. Data centers means land, real estate. That's what you would think, but it's a completely isolated. Me, So if you look at Tesla, and this is a very good use case, Tesla doesn't make its money using cars. They build an infrastructure in a way that their batteries is 60% cheap than what others can do. So if you notice what Elon did, what he did 50 years back, he sold his Tesla technology to be a public for free. So go and do. And people would say, are you nuts? Why would you do? But he used all of that money to build factories which build batteries which are a lot more efficient and cheaper, right? That's where their efficiency comes in. So you never know what is going to result in what, but you'd only see it evolving. And that's why when you stay in the present, you kind of see, okay, this is what's going to happen. That's where the future.
And so I think that's a great way to end this stuff because it shows us that modernization really is a way also to lift all boats in that sense, right? So that particular industry being modernized.
Actually, all the a lot of legacy, the tea industry comes out, the construction industry comes, the power industry comes up. If and as much as we think we lose our jobs, and modernization does drag multiple industries into the picture. It's impossible. Like we say, skills are going to die. Like I keep telling my son, right? I could just go online, download something, build my own music. I can build a song for heaven's sake. Why do I need you? Right? And that's where it is. He's got to enhance his skills to an extent that he's not only producing music, but he's got to build music in a way that uses technology and builds it better. An artist who used to draw on hand has to learn how to do it digital and then make it better. AI will just enhance your skills where you could contribute to the development of that technology. Yeah, even in skills, I think, for this.
All right. So thank you very much again to our audience for tuning in. And we hope you learned something new in our modernization strategy in Rocket Software.
Thanks a lot for having. Thank you.